Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us for tonight's Fireside Chat event. Our special guests for the evening will be elected officials from Districts 6 and 7. And when I say district, I'm referring to county commission districts. The framing of this event, when we were thinking about it, we said we've got to come up with a way to engage our residents here in Shelby County, and we need to do it in a way that's safe because we have COVID-19 that is a threat to us all, and so we've got to exercise that extra precaution. But we don't want to spare any access to information. We don't want to leave anything behind. So we want to adapt and change and create the space for our constituents to engage with our elected officials. And so here comes the Fireside Chat series, and we'll be going through districts 1 through 13 in terms of county commission districts, and you'll be hearing from a variety of our elected officials. So this is our third episode, and we will keep engaging you as much as possible because we understand the importance of getting our constituents and voters involved and informed. And so to get things rolling, I'd like to introduce to you all our moderator for the evening. We have someone who has been working for 20 years on issues and exercising her skills as an advocate and through organizing here in Shelby County and Memphis. She is first and foremost a working mother. She's a local organizer and is the communications director for Memphis Mid-South Democratic Socialists. And she also serves as the co-chair for electoral and political education committees. She's a former candidate for Memphis City Council, so she understands what it is to be both a candidate and an advocate who's working in the capacity of an activist and as an engaged constituent voter. And on top of that, she currently works as head of marketing for a political tech firm, and she's been doing that for about 8 years, working in marketing and advertising. And so I'd like to introduce to you our moderator, our captain for the evening, none other than the wonderful Miss Kat Allen, and I will bring her on screen and allow her to take the ship forward.
Hey, Michael, thank you so much for having me. Well, hello, everyone. Super excited to be here. Very grateful that the Shelby County Democratic Party has asked me to step in and moderate this evening. Particularly excited to moderate a panel of my own elected officials. So we'll get to that in just a second. But before we do, a little bit about the format for this evening. So members of the Shelby County Democratic Party, as well as the Grassroots Council for District 7, submitted questions that I'll be going over this evening. But please do be part of the conversation. You can submit questions or comments anytime through Facebook, since we're streaming Facebook, and then also via our YouTube channel as well. And we will get to those as we are able. I think that's pretty much it. That's the beauty of virtual events, right? So let's get right to it. We are joined this evening, thankfully, by our City Councilwoman, Councilwoman Michaelyn Easter Thomas from District 7. Hello, Michaelyn.
Good evening, Kat. How you doing?
I'm well. Good to see you as always. But
you as well.
Yeah, we also have County Commissioner Willie Brooks with us this evening.
Good evening.
Hello, Commissioner Brooks. How are you?
I am honored to be on this telecast. So, hey, I'm great. Had a good day today, and to be with my colleagues tonight, it's a wonderful experience.
Well, thank you for joining us. And then also from the County Commission, we have my County Commissioner, proud, Commissioner Tammy Sawyer. Tammy, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Kat. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. And then I believe if we don't already have him, he should be joining us shortly. State Representative Antonio Parkinson will be joining us this evening as well. So at this point, I think what makes the most sense is to let you all introduce yourselves. So first question, we'll wrap right into introductions this evening, right? So start by telling us about your district, any committees that you're serving on, and one thing that you are working on right now that you are particularly passionate about. And Michaelyn, we'll start with you.
Awesome. So I'm just glad to be here amongst my peers. I really want to hear what they're working on. But with the City Council District 7, I like to say that my district goes from the river to Raleigh. So it is the largest single member district in the City Council, and it includes over 10, 12 neighborhoods in the Memphis area. So the committee that I chair is the Public Service, Youth and Libraries and Animal Services Committee. And most recently, we have had conversations around animal ordinances, as well as spotlights and highlights for youth organizations in the city who are doing the work that we need to see across our communities. And things that I'm working on, I won't spill any beans today, but they are definitely around access and equity for the everyday Memphian.
Cool. Thank you. Commissioner Brooks, what you been working on? Oh, you might be muted. There you go.
And just let me first of all kind of give you the demographics of District 7, which represent a part of Fraser, Raleigh, and Bartlett. The boundaries go from northwest of Danny Thomas, which is Highway 51, southeast of Summer, and the zip codes include 38128, a part of 3127 and 3134. Commissioner Sawyer, Commissioner Lawyer, and myself, Mikhail Laurie, we share the Fraser district. So it's divided into 3 different parts of Fraser. So I'm elated to be a representative to serve the constituents of the district. My district consists of 70,000 residents, and which is divided again between Fraser, Raleigh, and a piece of Bartlett. Back in September, I was selected to participate in the fellowship program, and that program started in September and it's going all the way through June of 2021. And the primary focus is to deal with systemic racism and how we can increase economic opportunities, but primarily with small businesses in our neighborhoods. My primary focus is to deal primarily with increasing entrepreneurship within our neighborhoods. How do we do that? And primarily, I was one of 15 fellows that's been selected across the southern region to engage in this project. And I have an advisory committee that consists of various community people within the city of Memphis. And so it's been a real challenge, but an opportunity for us to work through this project. We are involved in webinars once a month, as well as coming together to talk about the plan, the strategy, and by the end of June, we will come back before, at least I will be doing a presentation before the county commission on how we can enhance or improve a small business entrepreneurship within the neighborhoods, which in fact drives economic growth. So that's where my primary focus has been.
Thank you. Tammy?
Thanks, everyone. Tammy Sawyer, County Commissioner, District 7. I represent North Memphis, parts of Binghamton, parts of Fraser, and parts of Midtown as well. And I am chair of the Education Committee, co-chair of the Core City Committee. And, you know, education is my focus right now. Equity, criminal justice reform, those are issues that I continue to work on, that I've worked on since the beginning. Really, right now, one of my focus areas is also pilot reform. We'll be having 2 meetings coming up soon in March 25th, and I believe April 6th. We'll have joint meetings with the City Council to discuss reevaluating pilots and our pilot programs and striving to make them more impactful from my point of view. So that's something that I'm very passionate about. Thank you.
Thank you. Love to see it, frankly. State Representative Antonio Parkinson, thank you so much for being with us.
He's muted.
Yeah, he might also. Whoop.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. Honored to be here. Glad to see all of my friends and my colleagues, my legislative branch colleagues from all the branches of government.
we're glad that you could join us this evening, and you were probably able to intuit this from the responses, but I'll rewind for just a second. So we were having everyone introduce themselves, what district they serve, what neighborhoods or parts of the city are inside of that district, committees that you're working on, and then one project this legislative session that you are particularly proud of or passionate about.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I'm Antonio Parkinson, State Representative for District 98. The district is predominantly comprised of the Raleigh area. We represent most of the parts of the North Memphis area, including Douglas High Park, all the way down Chelsea to McLean, and then south on McLean right around Cafe Eclectic, or right before you get to Snowden School. And so we have that area. But we also go all the way to Sycamore View, in the Raleigh Bartlett area, and we cover some of the Nutbush area, if I didn't mention that. My focus this year, well, let me go back a little bit. I was elected chairman of the Tennessee Black Caucus of State Legislators this year. And so in that capacity, you know, I've moved our focus to 3 areas, which is education, health, and how do we put money on the tables of the household. So those are the things that will improve people's quality of life. And so those are the areas of focus that we're operating on from the Black Caucus position. And from my position as a legislator also, my areas of focus are health, education, and how do we put money on the tables of the households. Because I want to make sure that we improve people's quality of life. I think a lot of times we are you know, our focus gets shifted into areas that are important, of course, but don't necessarily change the level of quality of life for people. And so I want to focus on that. Some of the legislation that I'm working on this year include something dealing with pilots, and I heard my dear friend Tammy mention pilot reform. So I definitely want to talk to you after, you know, as soon as we can, about what I'm working on in regards to pilots. Reducing taxes, reducing taxes in every place that we can to put money into the households of the families. Make sure that our children receive quality education, and making sure that we get through this pandemic. You know, so putting policies in place for that.
Great, thank you. And it also sounds like you've teed up this evening's line of question pretty well in terms of what we're going to cover. So stay with me, Representative Parkinson, because this next question is, all these questions are for everyone, but I think it's helpful if we start at the state level and then go to county commission. So we'll do you, we'll do Tammy, Commissioner Brooks, and then Michaelin. So this question is pertaining to water and water quality. So as you know, the recent boil water advisory and sustained freezing temperatures that caused it have led to a lot of discussion in the community around quality and infrastructure issues. The Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation is loaning us $15 million, I think, for repairs. So the question is, do you think this will be enough, considering, you know, the damage to the infrastructure and also the presence of lead levels in the water supply? And what are you doing specifically in your role to secure improvements for Memphis and Shelby County?
So will $15 million be enough? Absolutely not. You know, we got infrastructure repairs that go way beyond $15 million. I honestly think that may be just a drop in the bucket for what's needed, because, you know, the infrastructure hadn't been repaired in a very, very long time. And it predates all of us that are elected here at this time. You know, anything that will be supportive, if I'm not mistaken, Representative London Lamar and there's another legislator inside of the Black Caucus. They both have legislation regarding lead in drinking water, and I'm actually a co-sponsor of their legislation, so I'm signed on to it. But anything that will help to protect our aquifer, anything that will help to ensure that we have good and clean and quality drinking water, you know, for the future of Memphis and Shelby County, I'm all for. Anything actually that is about protecting our environment, I've always been, I think I got a 100% vote record on it.
Thank you. Tammy, your thoughts?
I couldn't find the mute button, sorry. I agree with Representative Parkinson. You know, $15 million, I'm sure will scratch the surface, but I think it's time for us to get started. You know, what happened with the ice storm showed us again our our weaknesses in our infrastructure. And, you know, I think what's important now is we've got to look forward. We've got major elections happening starting in 21, 22, 23. And, you know, so people have to put these things on the table. Infrastructure should be, you know, a part of all of our talking points, should be a part of the work that we're doing. You know, and the more damage that happens to our pipes, the more damage that happens to our water sources, the more that the cost is going to rise. And so we've got to get started now. I was happy to see MLGW have a conversation today. Well, I'm not sure where I stand with the recommendation to, you know, get rid of the RFP and not consider other companies outside of TVA. What President Young, president of MLGW, did put on the table was the importance that if they remain with TVA will be the best infrastructure, which is extremely needed.
Commissioner Brooks?
Definitely, I don't think 15 million is enough. I think when we look at our infrastructure, particularly with our streets, as well as our water pipes, you can walk right through a lot of our neighborhoods and you find that a lot of our streets need to be resurfaced as well, which when you find potholes and et cetera, we definitely need to evaluate and work with and make sure there's a balance between what's happening in our municipalities and what's happening in Memphis, and particularly in our district. So I, along with Commissioner Sawyer, will be looking as those requests come through the county commission to make sure there's equity and a balance of how we are looking at these particular projects and how the money is allocated to do repairs.
Thank you. Michaelin, what can we do at the city level to secure improvements to the infrastructure?
So just to remind people that last year it was voted in council and approved to allocate a higher rate for MLGW to go towards infrastructure. So the main thing is about accountability in that, right? So we've already approved that money. The council approved it. And so looking to make sure that we put our money where we said we're going to put it, especially after we're seeing all of these issues, just reiterating what my colleague said, all of these issues that we got from the snowstorm that will probably be more than likely to happen again due to the global warming that's happening around our world. So we just want to make sure that what we have in place is not what we've seen these past 2 weeks, where we're scrambling for water, where we're scrambling to get the water turned off, where we're scrambling to get our water pressures down, and we're having to shut down buildings and not go in schools and shutting down city occupant buildings. So we just want to make sure that we're not on crisis mode the next time that this happens, and that we have more things in place to ensure a emergency plan or set of plans that can be enacted between the city, the council, and our colleagues at the state. So just making sure that we utilize this money that we've approved to what we need to use it for, especially in our low income areas in the city.
And let me just also add that I think it's very important that we get the administration to do some assessment and present a plan to address infrastructure within the city as well as the county, so we know how to prioritize those dollars. I think that's going to be very important.
Thank you, Commissioner. And when you say the administration, you're referring to both city and county working together?
Well, I can speak on behalf of the county. I think my colleague speak on behalf of the city. But our role as the county is to make sure that we have some assessment and report in terms of going forward on how do we address the CAN infrastructure, what that plan is, and what the costs associated with that.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification. Well, speaking of having a plan, next question is pretty intense in that regard. So let's talk about vaccine rollouts. We know that the vaccine rollout has been fraught with issues, whether that was wasted doses or later no communication about who is eligible in vaccination sites, to the recent resignation of Dr. Haushalter. What we know for sure is that Tennessee ranks last in vaccination. So the question is, what are all levels of government doing to improve vaccination rates? And Michaelin, will actually start with you, and then we'll hear from Commissioner Brooks, Commissioner Sawyer, and Representative Parkinson.
So, Kat, I am happy to say that if you were looking at your press releases today, then you would have seen a press release from the Memphis City Council office, which highlights the resolution that Councilman J.B. Smiley put forth, and that also had the majority of council members sign on as co-sponsors, that asks for the city administration to adopt the Black Church Mobile Vaccine Program, that it was already in place and that we've seen being pushed out and implemented, particularly by Pastor Kia Moore of the Wells. And so using that as a tool to make sure that we get vaccines into our communities, or at least get the information so that people can make their choice. It's about the option. So we're pushing that to hopefully that the city will adopt it. But as you know, we've just had a switch in who's in control of delivering those vaccines. We've had an update today as well, but I will say that that's what we're pushing from the council side, and those who have the majority of representatives in these underrepresented areas. And so that's what we're pushing, is the Black Church Mobile Vaccine Program, and that was just put out today.
Good to know. Thank you. Commissioner Brooks?
Yeah, I think it's very important that we make sure that we get closer to the constituent base. And that's mode that I believe that we should be working in, because many times people are not making a transition crossing town. I reached out and made sure that Grady Money, which is in the Raleigh area of town, was available to do vaccines. And just the other day, Bishop Porter, Greater Community Temple out Hickory Hill, reached out to me. I made a contact to the city, and starting the 13th, they will be administering vaccines at Greater Community Temple in Hickory Hill. So I think it's very important that we are working closely together to make sure that the vaccines are available within our communities, more closely to where our constituents are, and to ensure that they are following up on their appointment. Because one of the things that I learned over the last several weeks is that for the most part, we are not following through on our appointments. And as a result, the administration in the past have gone out and tried to recruit people just to fill the open spots of vaccines where people wasn't showing up. So it's very important that we encourage those who are making the appointments, that they fulfill those appointments.
Tammy, I know that you've been an outspoken advocate for public health and safety and doing everything we can throughout this entire pandemic. What more can we be doing?
I think that Commissioner Brooks definitely, drives home an important point, and Councilwoman Easter Thomas as well. What's important here is that we're doing our best as representatives, as people who have connections to the public, to help the public get the vaccine. That means getting to the vaccine. That means getting accurate information about the vaccine, and moving forward from everything that's happened, we also have a role to play in making sure that vaccine is distributed equitably. I know that one of the plans for the county, once we pass the remediation stage with the state, is to work to make sure that we are doing some mobile vaccine outreach, and to ensure that those who don't have transportation, are elderly, low-income neighborhoods, that they're able to just walk to some of the vaccine stations and go ahead and get those. And so I think that those of us who are here are probably all on the same page there. One thing I'll just take a quick second to highlight is, inmates received vaccines 2 weeks ago, and there's a lot of conversation around that. And, and I just want to urge people to think about the fact that people in 201 Poplar, the majority of them have not yet been convicted of a crime. And regardless of if folks are in jail as detainees or they're in jail as inmates, they're people. And they're people in close quarters without the protection or the ability to social distance the way that those of us who have the freedom to be outside and be in our own homes are. And so 200 vaccines given to inmates during a snowstorm should not be a point of contention. What we really should be doing is focusing on operating from a position of scarcity, operating from a position of understanding that we want everyone to get vaccinated, everyone who chooses to get vaccinated. And so 20% of the people in the summer of 2020 who were infected with COVID-19 were inmates. Prisons and jails, as well as your packaging and logistical plants, are two of your largest hotspots in the country. And we don't put those people in priorities. We don't put the inmates and the corrections officers in priority, and we don't put the working people who are making hourly wages, low income wages, to pack our chicken and pack our beef and get our Amazon packages to us while we're sitting, at home quarantine and over shopping. And so, I just want to ask everyone to have a little bit as we continue. Luckily next week, I believe 36,000 vaccines are dropping in Tennessee. And so I just want to, in Shelby County, I want us to be, not grass is greener about this. If someone else gets it, you can still get the vaccine too. And I know it's been a stressful process, but let's not, deny someone else, regardless of their status or their qualifications. Let us not deny those people the right to be healthy.
And let me also add that I think one of the challenges going forward is once a person receives the first dosage, being able to know when they can schedule their next dosage. And what I mean by that, typically when you take the first shot, you receive a card and it says you must take your exam 21 or 28 days after you take the first dosage. But it does not give you a place where you sign up at, or say, if I took the shot at Southwest Community College, come March 15 days or 21 days later, I have a date, an appointment time at which I can take my second shot. So when you're dealing with senior citizens, it becomes a real challenge for them to understand when they are scheduled to take their next vaccine shot. And so that's one of the things that I think going forward, working with the city, that we need to come up with a plan with how do we address those persons who have taken the first dosage but need to reschedule for the second dosage. Because right now, I think if you go out there on the schedule, you only can book, it's set up where you're going to do it 1 week out. So you can't look at the schedule and say 21 days from the date I took it, I can go out there and schedule a date for my second dosage. So that's one of the things that I think we have to look at and see how we can improve that.
That's an excellent point. Thank you. Antonio, same question for you, but Tammy did make an excellent point that I think is worth thinking through. And that's, what are all levels of government doing to improve vaccination rates? And also, as we work through these different phases of vaccination, what can we do, or what can be done to ensure that people who have been on the front lines of this pandemic the entire time, not just healthcare workers, but also, hourly childcare workers, retail workers, people who are pretty far back in that phased approach, where does the opportunity lie to begin to prioritize them as well?
It doesn't under this plan, under the plan that the state has put forth. This tier system is actually a hindrance to people getting the shots. Some people show up to the appointment, some people don't. Some people don't know when to come back, as Commissioner Brooks stated, and it's been a bit problematic and challenging. And I believe that we should be taking the vaccines to the people, where they are. They should be setting up a vaccine event at FedEx or so that these places where there can be potential super spreaders, they can get access to the vaccines. I think that even in the tier system, with the push for opening the schools up, at that time that they were putting the pressure on the school systems to open up, there was no plan for the teachers to have access to the vaccines at that time. Some teachers were going across states, were going to Mississippi to get the vaccines, and some in Davidson were going into Kentucky to get the vaccines, and that's unfortunate. But here's what I really want to make sure that we impress upon everyone: understand the politics of this vaccine rollout. There's a push at the state to basically nullify the power that the health departments have in times of a pandemic. And this is something that's been talked about and laid out way before we got to this point with the vaccinations in Shelby County, either expiring or whatever happened, all of the things that happened. But also, I want you to understand this too. that there are vaccination or vaccine issues of expired vaccines, vaccines being thrown in the garbage can, wrong people getting the shots, unaccounted for vaccines throughout the entire state. So let's make sure that we understand that. But let's also make sure that we understand that we as citizens of Shelby County, citizens of Memphis, we cannot allow actors to come in and cause us to be divided amongst each other because of what is being levied at our community. Now, let me make sure that I'm perfectly clear. Accountability is important. Accountability is needed. So if there were some things that were not done properly or done wrong in our rollout, then absolutely there should be accountability. But also understand that it's not the same level of pressure coming from the state, or the same intensity coming from the state to other communities that have lost or thrown away thousands of vaccines in other communities. I mean, just right behind Shelby County's challenge was Rutherford County, where they lost or had a close to 1,000 expired vaccines themselves, but it was more of a rub on the palm and okay, we'll get through this together type of approach versus the harsh approach that had been applied with Shelby County. And so and then you have to also keep in mind and look at, when the shift in the vaccinations rollout was shifted to the city, that could cause a division between the city and the county, and we absolutely do not need that. So I just want us to be cognizant of that fact, and that we all stay on the same page, same team, and when it comes to Shelby County and the city of Memphis.
That's an excellent point. And you brought it up before I was going to, but Shelby County is not the only county in the state of 95 counties total that has had, issues with vaccines. And yet we somehow find ourselves under the microscope again.
Right. And if you don't mind me just piggybacking onto that, I'm putting the charger in my phone up. But that has been the history of the relationship between the state and Shelby County and the state and Davidson County. And these two institutions, these two entities, both counties, they are the largest contributors to the coffers of the state of Tennessee. And let me show this to you visually. If you were to divide the state and create two states and started from secession, started from the eastern borders of Davidson County all the way to the Mississippi River, we'd probably be one of the richest democratic states in the union. And East Tennessee would be one of the poorest, probably even worse than that of West Virginia. And so because all of the Fortune 500, the largest companies, the tax base that really contributes to the coffers of the states of Tennessee is coming from Davidson and Shelby County.
I'd just like to add, it appears that some of the challenges were staffing and logistics. And so having the financial resources to support staffing when you roll out this type of vaccine for the large population such as Shelby County, because I think Shelby County is the largest county within the state of Tennessee. But I'm not aware that funding was coming from the state in support of proper staffing to roll out these vaccines in our various communities. And so that's one thing that you have to evaluate is what resources are available to ensure that there's success in the program that you're being implemented. I just wanted
that support was requested from Shelby County to the state, but it fell on deaf ears. And then when everything blew up, they still asked Shelby County, hey, resubmit your request.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I want to just press on this for 1 second and then move on to the next question for time's sake. Representative Parkinson, as it pertains to, these hourly workers, childcare workers, retail, like food service, Do you believe that enough public pressure across the state will move the governor on rethinking the phases of these vaccinations, or no? Do we just need to wait for election time?
No, I hadn't seen anything that would move the governor on anything outside of the fringes of his party inside the Tennessee House. And, it's his, in most cases, or a lot of cases, he tends to respond to those voices that are coming from inside of his own party. And now let me be clear. There are, and I'm always going to shoot straight. There are a lot of things that the governor is working on that are in line with some of the things that we agree with. Criminal justice reform is one of them, and so, but there are other areas that we could use a little bit more leadership, so to speak. Coming from his office, but I understand the position he's in also, because some of the decisions that he makes or he has to make is because he has to deal with, those members of the Tennessee House, that really, really wield a lot of power, in our state. And unfortunately, Governor Haslam had to deal with the same thing. Governor Haslam had insurance for Tennesseans, and it was called Insure Tennessee, but it was that fringe group inside the House and the Senate that made it so that plan could never, ever see the light of day.
Yep. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. Speaking of people who are very much on the front lines of this, so schools are open again. Michaelin, I'd like to start with you since you are an educator. How can we keep teachers and students safe now that schools are open again?
Great question. As we're trying to figure out the same thing as I work inside of a school. I think the main thing what we need to consider is that families have the option. So I'm thankful that SCS still allow for families to choose whether they wanted to return to the building or whether they wanted to remain at home. Because what this does is let the family look at their particular situation and see if they need to be in the building or not. Just a reminder that all learning is still virtual. So it's not as though things are returning to quote unquote normal in the school building. Kids are still learning synchronously and asynchronously on their issued devices. There shouldn't be any passing of classes. Buses that come, students are temp checked at the door, and if they do have a temperature, they are sent to separate rooms. Each school building, I will add, was given the autonomy and independence in creating their own safety of returning plans specific to that school. So how they're holding children, who all is in charge of making sure that those children stay safe, delivering the lunches, bathroom breaks, more frequent cleaning by custodial staff, also PPE being delivered to every single teacher, masks being supplied. I know that yesterday in our school in particular, we had the shields set up on the desk. So all of these, we're checking all of our lists, right? We're checking all of the boxes on our list to make sure we can do as much as possible in our individual schools to keep people safe. The thing is what people do outside of school. So it's not about, I think it's more safe in the building than it is once. And I mean, everybody, students, parents, staff, custodial staff, what you do outside of the building is what's going to determine how safe your school is. So if spring break is coming, if we're going out of the country, if we're being haphazard with our masks in certain places, I know that Mississippi just lifted their mask mandate. If we're going back and forth across, not wearing your mask in South Haven and DeSoto and bringing it back to your Shelby County school, that's a problem. So I think that it's more of a look out on what people are doing outside of the school and how that's going to impact what's the possibility of being brought into the building.
Yep.
So I'm going to turn it back around on everybody else. How are you making sure that our schools are safe? What are you doing to make sure that we're safe on the inside?
Yeah, that feels right. Tammy, curious to know how can we keep our students and teachers safe now that schools are open?
So as chair of education, I've had a lot of conversations with not just SES, but with the superintendents of all the schools within Shelby County. And, I do believe that children's safety is the #1 priority. I have my concerns just like everyone else. I'm not a fan of the plexiglass. I think that takes away, the collaborative element of learning, the childhood. Commissioner Brooks, you're not muted. And, so what I think is important there. But let me just say, step back a second. I agree 100% with Councilwoman Easter Thomas that first and foremost, it's on all of us to protect our children, no matter what the mandate is in Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas. What are we doing to protect teachers, children, and families? Families have choices about being in the schools, but those who had to make the choice or did make the choice to return to schools, just like when we were talking about earlier, everyone deserves to be kept safe from this. So I think for me, it's about continuing to have conversations with SCS, about what steps they're taking. During the return to school planning phase, I consistently asked, what could the Shelby County Commission provide to support? Was there money for masks? Was there money for other PPEs? I've had people reach out and say, we didn't have soap before COVID-19. How are we going to make sure that we have soap now? We didn't have ventilation before COVID-19. What are we going to do about that now? And I am a believer that everyone needs to play their role. I have a lot to say about what people do. Everybody knows that, you can see me in my opinions, very frequently, but what you'll never see me do is take a stance on paper chastising another elected body, and so I believe that I try to support the school system and try to build a relationship with them in a way where when I have concerns or critiques or people come to me with concerns or critiques, I take that directly. I text Superintendent Ray all the time, whether it's good or whether it's bad or in between. And so I try to build that relationship there. And I hear a lot of the concerns, from teachers, students, and families, and I take that back to the school board. I take that back to the superintendent. The most important thing is going, to me, outside of keeping students safe, is, what we've lost in this last year. I think our conversations about learning loss there's fair critique about whether or not that's over exaggerated. But the fact of the matter is, before our children experienced COVID-19 shutting down schools, we were looking at only a third of our kids graduating from SES ready to go to work or college. And that still needs to be the focus. How do we get from 1/3 to 3/4, 6/8, 9/10 of our children we're talking ready for work. And so that's what I'm focused on. I think that just like everyone else who's reopening, we can continue to talk about keeping people safe. But for me, most importantly, is what are we doing with our youth?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Commissioner Brooks and Representative Parkinson, if either of you have legislative priorities related to this or things that haven't already been mentioned, definitely want to hear it. As a time consideration, we do have about 3 questions left to get to, and I know that Commissioner Brooks has a hard stop at 7, so I want to respect everyone's time this evening. But just quickly from either of you, anything to add to this before we move on?
Well, I'd just like to say that last week, Shelby County Schools helped administer 6,000 vaccines for our educators, and that happened last week. So that's a move going forward, and we want to encourage our teachers to take the vaccine. From talking with the school system, 28,000 students are projected to start school, but they actually started K-5 started March 1, and then of course 6 to 12 will start on March the 8th. So we want to make sure that they have the resources, and I will be certainly supporting education. I'm an advocate for education, and so I want to make sure that they have the resources they need to be effective and to get their job done. Today, I met with Dr. Brown regarding vocational, which we implemented a summer internship program to provide some meaningful experiences for our young people. And so through this process, they will learn quite a bit in terms of social skills and interaction and being marketable. And so we're looking forward to making an improvement there as well.
Great. Representative Parkinson?
Yeah. So again, I just want to touch on the politics side of this. Putting the children back in school was never really about putting the children back in school for education purposes. It was about putting the children back in school because the DHS roles had filled, the unemployment roles had filled, and because people were having to make a choice between their children being at home learning virtually and their children and them going to work. And so this was really more about getting people back to work and getting the economy going in the state of Tennessee first, as much as with less being about education. The learning loss numbers that were initially given were literally pulled out of the air, and that was used as the precipitous for getting the students back into the classroom. So let's make sure that we understand that, and I just want to make sure that we are, as we discuss these things, we also understand the politics of these things that are mainly coming from the state of Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So speaking of unemployment rolls, you can hit the nail right on the head. Michaelin, let's go right back and start with you. So we know that, this has been unbelievably difficult for us as a state, as a city, as a county, economically. And by that, I mean just the everyday material conditions of the people of Memphis and of Shelby County. So, what protections or safety nets are currently available for those who have been affected by the resulting economic issues from the pandemic? And what all are you all continuing to work on or prioritize?
So, Kat, on a city level, I think I don't misspeak when I say that I believe all of the funds that we allocated last year have depleted on a city level as far as economic impact. I know that the Office of Diversity and Compliance has given out $5 million to small businesses and MWBE businesses across the city, and then even extended to the county in the later months of the year. We have allocated money towards MIFA for utility assistance, and just recently this past Tuesday, given $1 million towards the vaccine program, which isn't economic issues, but that was still being able to be allocated from that CARES Act funding. What we do a lot is make sure that folks know about the opportunities on the county side with the Community Services Agency, because that is where a lot of funding has gone from our HCD department, our Housing and Community Development Department. So I'm going to Community Services Agency. But what I will tell people is that we are coming up on our FY22 budget season. And most particularly, we're looking at those organizations and groups that were cut from last year's budget, but still provided major resources and assistance for those in the city. And I'm talking about nonprofits. I'm talking about community organizations that could not find a line item in our last year's budget that we're hoping that can return to the full budget. As well as keeping our city council grant program. We've had some issues on council where some council members have asked to have that completely removed. And so we think about how are we going to be able to assist those who are already doing the work on the ground, people that haven't stopped, no matter what economic issues or hardships have faced them personally from COVID-19. One group comes to mind, and I just love shouting them out every time I can. The Times Now Douglas CDC. No matter what economic issues that they had, they kept pushing and still are. They're doing a food giveaway on Saturday. So just being able to assist those that are doing the work that we directly can't do as a city. And I just want to put that out there publicly, that we want to make sure that we keep that money in the budget and also be able to return money in our budget for line items that was cut last year for those organizations and groups and nonprofits that are doing the work in our city.
Helpful to know. Thank you. Perhaps also taking a look at some areas of the budget that may be overfunded for the role that they play in our community. Commissioner Sawyer, will you talk a little bit about what the county has done for economic relief and what's still on the table out there for folks?
Absolutely. We have the Share the Tab program, which provided relief to restaurants, and now we have Share the Tab 2. I just wanted to see if he was going to say hello. Share the Tab 2. Now we have Share the Tab 2, which was just announced this week, where people who work in restaurants and hospitality can get up to $1,000 from the county. And so that application is live on the county commission website, on the Shelby County government website. So if you worked in hospitality at any time in 2021, you're able to get that $1,000 from the county. And so I would recommend everyone go ahead and apply before that goes away at shelbycountykn.gov. And, we've exhausted our PPE dollars. I think Commissioner Brooks can talk about that as well. But it's, I have concerns there about some of the decisions that were made. But we vote as a body, and that's where the dollars fell. But I think that we have been responsive since the beginning of COVID-19. Groups of us have worked with MLGW to, make sure that we have funding in place so that, Dorcas Griffin with our Division of Community Services has led an impeccable process through COVID, supporting people with their MOGW bills, supporting people with getting access to food, and so I just would say that there's a lot of resources there. So definitely check out our division. And, we've got budget season coming up, and we really got to get serious about, to Representative Parkinson's point, what our dollars look like, what our taxes look like. And that's why we're having a conversation about pilots. We had this conversation last year about, taxes in different ways, because the county needs more money. We've gone deeply into our coffers, as they say. For me, I say spend it all. We got stuff to do, but I'm not a fiscal conservative, and I'm not a fiscal liberal. No, I'm not a fiscal, whatever the title is. I say spend the people's money on the people so we can get our done. Okay, but we do need to make sure that we have money to do the business of the county. And so you'll be hearing a lot of conversations, because to continue to be people-centered and do the work that we need to do, we need to make sure that we're bringing money in.
Understood. I want to, since we've had a response from the county, I want to pop quickly over to Representative Antonio Parkinson, because Commissioner Brooks, this next question, I think I want to make sure that we get everybody at the city and county level in on this one, but we can certainly come back to COVID protections related to unemployment and things like that in just a moment. So Representative Parkinson, at the state level, what's happening economically to improve the material conditions of Tennesseans?
Well, let me preface with this. The governor in his state of the state address it alluded to the fact that the Tennessee Unemployment Fund is the most stable unemployment fund in the union, meaning that it did not deplete to the levels that other states funding depleted to. But let me make sure that we're clear on this. Unemployment benefits issues and challenges is my number one constituent complaint. We are working almost, honestly, 3/4 of the day working on unemployment issues because people cannot get a response from the Tennessee Department of Labor to free up their money. They will have been approved for unemployment benefits, but they will hear nothing else from the Department of Labor. And so they call our offices, which we don't mind helping. And we try to free up their money. Some we have been able to free up, and a lot of others that we have not been able to free up. And people are suffering. And so to me, it seems as if there is an intentional effort afoot to drag this process out. And then when you marry that with the push to get the children back in school, I think that this was part of the strategy in order not to deplete the unemployment fund, because once it's depleted, as it goes down, then the unemployment insurance costs to businesses go up. And the governor alluded to that himself in his State of the State address, basically, patting themselves on the back, saying that, we hadn't spent our unemployment fund. So those businesses won't have to spend more money in replenishing the unemployment. And so, but at the end of the day, people are suffering, right? People are suffering. People are losing their homes. They're losing their cars and possessions, and it's creating severe instability in these households. And that also is part of and I'm not trying to go down a rabbit hole, but that's also what's part of the adverse childhood experiences that some of our children are going through also. So it exasperates the problem. And so, but there are those of us that are inside of, the Tennessee legislature, again, and it's not just the Tennessee Black Caucus, but it's also the Tennessee House Democratic Caucus that has made a focus of focusing our energy on health, education, and how we can put money into the households of people.
Thank you. Next question, Commissioner Brooks, I know that you have to leave us in just a moment, sadly. So we'll start with you. The question is a pretty quick one, though, so it shouldn't take long. Yes or no, do you support the Byhalia pipeline?
Well, let me go back first to address a couple of issues regarding the unemployment, because currently I think it's important that we know that our unemployment rate in Shelby County is 8.4% compared to what it was last year, which is 3.4%. But more importantly, what the county commission has done, we enhanced our community grant to partner with organizations, nonprofit organizations, to provide support and services, because we recognize that we could not do this work alone. So each commissioner was allocated X number of dollars to work to partner with these nonprofit agencies to provide services back to our constituents in order that we can service them as well. And then, as Commissioner Sawyer indicated, the $2.5 million that were allocated to provide funding for restaurant and hotel workers, you must go to the Urban League website in order to apply for that $1,000 grant. So I just want to kind of clarify and direct people where they may go. That's the Memphis Urban League website to apply for that grant. In regards to the supporting the Byhalia pipeline, health, safety, and environment is at the utmost, for me, the most important part in which we have to be concerned with the constituents that we've been elected to serve. And so I'm still at this point of evaluating where we are. We typically lean to the commissioner in that respective district, since this is in Commissioner Ford district, for some direction as to where he is in support of this effort. But I'm continuing evaluating how this issue would impact our community as it relates to health, safety, and environment, as well as what the economic benefit is going to be. So I'm still at this process evaluating where we are. The county commission does not make the decision on whether or not the permit is received. That process has already occurred with the state and the federal level. What we have to decide is what the parcels that they are asking to purchase is whether or not that would be approved. So that's where I am at this point. It's still being evaluated, but I'm listening to all the constituents and feedback that I'm getting.
Thank you. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you don't currently have a solid position at this point, but are open to the feedback of your constituency. Is that an accurate summarization?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Commissioner Sawyer?
Yes, thank you. I released a statement a few weeks ago stating that I support the people who have formed the activism group and are focused on ensuring that the pipeline does not run across their property. And I've informed Byhalia Pipeline of that position. And I agree with Commissioner Brooks. It's not my district. For a while, I stayed out of it, vocally, just because we do tend to defer to commissioners based on what their district is. But, as has been said, it's all of our water. And so I would, really like to, just make sure that it's known that that's where I stand. I'm in support of the voices who are against the pipeline being run, especially since we just found out today that a spill had just happened near that location. I have concerns about the fact that the pipeline was chosen to be run through Black neighborhoods when it would have been a more direct route in more affluent white neighborhoods, and that it's going through a neighborhood that that is already a victim of environmental racism. And so that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Easter Thomas, support for the Byhalia pipeline.
I think that it's a good point that Commissioner Sawyer just ended on, as we just think about environmental racism, trends of zoning that we see in our Black and Brown communities, and how that is just exacerbated through things that will come through, like the Byhalia pipeline. So to this past Tuesday, I know that there have been a lot of pushes and attempts at communication for City Council in particular about what people may feel we can do as far as a council. But I think Commissioner Brooks said it best when he said that this is a state and a federal matter, and that we want to make sure that as a city, we don't put our foot in our mouths in whatever we put out as far as an ordinance or resolution, because that can come back to hurt all of us. And when I say all of us, I mean a possible lawsuit where we have to pay through your taxes. So we want to make sure that we're saying the right things, which is why this is how I'm speaking, is not speaking in the capacity of the city council, but me as a council person and as a community member. I don't support anything that expounds upon environmental racism that we have in our city, in our communities. So definitely not supporting what would go through a Black neighborhood, but also just wanting to make it super clear that this is not a city council determination. This is not a county commission determination. This is a state and a federal matter. And that is not to deter those who have gotten involved on looking at this issue. I think it's grand to see how many people are paying attention to what's going on. But we just want to make sure that people know it takes more than just that one tweet or that one email to know exactly who to target for this information. And so I think that it has put it on the hearts and the minds of all of us. But I just want to reiterate, it's not a city issue. I just want to make sure that's said on this Fireside Chat so that folks know. So, but I'm definitely reading the emails. I just want to make sure that people know it's not under our control. And so I can support it or not support it all day, but the Byhalia pipeline is not under the city or county control.
Understood. And with that, let's kick it on over to the state level. Representative Parkinson, thoughts on the pipeline?
It's a no for me.
Love it. Succinct, short, to the point. Follow-up question, what's happening at the state level to oppose it?
Nothing at this point that I've seen. And, because it's not in my district, I don't get all of the frontline information in regards to it. But I think at this point it's at the federal level. I saw where Congressman Cohen was reaching out to President Biden to stop it.
Mm-hmm. That is true. Okay. You all have hung in there with us. Last question. Thank you again so much for joining. And then we'll hand it right back over to Chairman Harris to wrap up. Final question. Senator Brian Kelsey, is sponsoring a bill that would change residency requirements for first responders, including and primarily police officers. Do you, in the capacity that you can as an elected official and or a public figure, whatever is right for your particular office, do you support this bill? And really, how should we look at this bill in light of other bills happening at the state level as well that seek to govern specific counties only or limit the ability of specific counties to govern themselves? And I think it makes the most sense to start right back again with Representative Parkinson.
It's a no for me. But I will expound on this. So, and I've spoken to Senator Kelsey about this, and I've spoken to Representative Moe, who's carrying the bill on the House side, and the two bills differ on each side at this point. You know, and I explained to Senator Kelsey that, you know, what you're doing is you're creating legislation that will allow the state, once again, to go over the head of our duly elected local officials. And I have real issue with that. I also have issue with the fact that you, under this bill, you are allowing the dollars that I pay in taxes to be paid to an individual, only for that individual to not only take them outside of this county, but possibly take them into Mississippi to spend and build their communities in Mississippi or Arkansas or even Alaska if they can fly back and forth. And I have real issue with that. You know, I also think it's incumbent upon the mayor of Memphis to take a position on this legislation. And that to date, I have not seen him take a position on this legislation. Now, let me tell you why this is important that he takes a position. It's important that he takes a position because this is an issue of muting the voices of the people that we elect to make decisions. Now, we cannot stand on the sideline and be okay with something like this happening because you favor what it is that they're doing. And then on the other hand, be upset when they mute your voice because someone in a different party wants something done where they disagree with what you have done. And so we cannot be, you know, okay with it when it's something that we agree with and not okay with them going over locally elected officials' head when it's something that we disagree with. And so I think it's important, again, the mayor of Memphis needs to take a position on this legislation, whether he's for the legislation or not for the legislation.
Mm-hmm. Councilwoman Easter Thomas, I know that police residency requirements have been something that has been discussed inside of the council chambers. What is your take on Kelsey's bill to change residency requirements, and how might that impact us?
The scary thing is that as we're and State Representative Parkinson, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't it get heard for a second time today? What was the status with it?
It did. It has moved through the Senate, if I'm not mistaken. And let me add this to this also. The chamber always has a position on legislation also, but they are quiet about this legislation also, and they should take a position on this legislation because this robs the tax base of Memphis, the middle class tax base of Memphis, which the chamber needs in order to continue to bring businesses and other things to the city. I'm sorry, Councilwoman, I just had to throw that in there.
It's fine. It's my state representative. So if we don't recall, we had a whole ordeal about this before the last election. We voted to take the question of residency off of the November ballot because we wanted to make sure that residency requirements were something that were retained for our Memphis Police and Fire. And for someone that does not represent the city of Memphis, it was said in council meeting Tuesday that he's from Germantown. That ain't Memphis either. So we want to make sure that those who we've elected, as State Representative Parkinson said, get to represent the people and our constituents. And so this does not help in any form or fashion our communities. It doesn't help our push for community policing. It doesn't help as Parkinson noted, our tax base. I don't like that certain things are happening across the border, across Mississippi, that may not be happening in Whitehaven or Westwood. So we have to think about the long-term impact and the financial impact of those decisions. And just to bring it right back around to what Parkinson just said and what I just said, we have a governing body that was elected to make decisions for our city. And so to allow for some council members to not only allow, but encourage the overstep and overpowering upon a local governing body is shameful. So we want to make sure that everyone, all 13 of us, were elected to make sure that voices of Memphis are heard and to bring in voices from the outside. This whole thing is about bringing in people from the outside to make decisions over Memphis. The same thing is happening with Brian Kelsey in the state. Those from the outside coming to make decisions over Memphis. And it's just downright shameful that is happening, but also that is encouraged by some council members that are on our sitting council. You're on mute, Kat.
I knew it was going to happen to me eventually. I was just saying it's interesting how in favor of small government certain elected officials are until it's somebody else's neck they want to step on. Commissioner Sawyer, how do we view this from a county perspective?
So let's be 100% clear about what's going on here, since this is the Democratic Party Zoom conference call. This is an attempt to shift the power. We've seen it happen throughout the history of Memphis. What's happening right now, this is not the only Kelsey bill. There are other Kelsey bills, the takeover of the health department, the preemption of opening schools. We're seeing it left and right. The undue control that at times our own commissioners who represent the county attempt to have over parts of Memphis that they have no relationships with. But what is happening here is, an effort. We're going to look up, and the people who are going to have the authority and the control in Memphis won't look anything like Memphis, won't reside in Memphis. You've got 50 people on the Shelby County Crime Commission, and they almost have more power than elected officials when it comes down to the bills they draft and the issues that they support. There's going to be people talking about consolidation. You're seeing people start to make moves right now. So that they can run for county mayor, so that they can run for city mayor. But what's going to be most important for Republicans, and especially wealthy white Republicans, is that we consolidate city and county government so that they can have an unfair advantage, so that they can win more seats if we're not careful about what happens. Right now, the people who have the most influence over Memphis don't match the majority demographic of this city, don't experience the poverty, don't receive the assets, and they have the access that the majority of us do not. And so all of this that Brian Kelsey and others are doing, this is a well played out and drafted game plan to take power from Black Democrats in Shelby County and those who align with them, and to make sure that what we want, we don't get. And so that they can then go and force the city and county to be one government, so that they can rule, live where they want to live, and come play downtown and work downtown, and then go back to the suburbs and still get the advantage while the left of us are left out to dry.
Well said. Commissioner Brooks, any thoughts to add about this Kelsey bill, all the Kelsey bills, and the attempt to govern Memphis from outside of Memphis?
I don't support any bill that Senator Kessler brings forth, and the reason why is because he doesn't come back and consult with those of us who are elected leaders who represent our particular districts. There's no way we will be able to go out there and change things that impact Germantown without their having their input. And they show that. So no, I do not support it. But more important, I think what's important for me, working for a major employer, is to make sure that we are filling the vacancies that occur within city government. If there is a need for more MPD officers, then we need to work to make sure that we are filling those vacancies. That's where our focus should be, and there will not be a need for residential. If we can fill those vacancies and encourage people to apply for these positions that are open, we can alleviate that problem. So no, I don't support it, but I don't think he needs to make sure, we need to send a signal that if he needs to be supporting us as opposed to him coming up with what he wants to do for Shelby County, what our input. We are elected to represent our constituents. He needs to give us that respect and work with us to see what our needs are.
Agreed, wholeheartedly. Thank you. And as Tammy pointed out, this really, it's a Kelsey bill, but it's really bigger than Brian Kelsey, isn't it? And I wasn't personally briefed on whether or not we were naming all the names tonight on this Shelby County Democratic Party call, but I can tell you that I named plenty of names on my personal social media. So happy to expound more upon that perhaps another time. For now, we are well over time. I do want to respect the time that our panelists have given to us this evening. Thank you all so much. This has been a really incredible discussion. We probably could have spent the same amount of time on just one of the questions, but just, maybe 30 seconds or less just to hear from each of you. And we'll go, Councilwoman Easter Thomas, Commissioner Brooks, Commissioner Sawyer, State Rep Parkinson. What is the best way for your constituents to plug into your work and engage with you as we fight for a better community together?
I'm glad you added that, fighting together. I tell my constituents all the time, I want you to call me, 901-721-7667. Text me, go on Facebook, go on Twitter, go on Instagram, send me an email, go on the website, because I want to make sure that I'm saying, yes, it's about accessibility. I want to make sure that somebody had an echo, that I'm making myself as much accessible to know what's going on in my district. So I'm sure you can reach out to me on many different mediums. We need to make sure that we're in tune and on the same accord. We have roundtables for my district bi-monthly. If you would like to be added to that, you can definitely send me an email. Those are virtual, but just making sure that you're staying aware of what we're doing so that we can have a fruitful conversation about how we all need to work together for the betterment of the district.
Thank you. Commissioner Brooks, how can your constituents reach you?
Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to participate. Certainly, they can reach me at 901-222-1032, as well as connecting through Shelby County government email that's located on our website. And I'm committed to respond to my constituents 7 days a week. I don't look at this as being just a part-time job. I have a commitment of making sure that I'm focused on improving the quality of life for the people that elected me. And so I work with the elected officials, my counterparts from state to the city and to the county to make sure that we're working together as a team. So I'm very accessible.
Thank you. Commissioner Sawyer?
Thank you. You can reach me at tami.sawyer@shelbycountytn.gov. I check my email pretty frequently. And you can also give me a call at 901-222-1000. That'll send you to my desk phone and allow you to leave voicemail, which I check frequently as well. And we'll get right back to you. And I think most people who are watching today probably know you can also probably most quickly reach me on social media, where I frequently respond and engage to support and help.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm the most accessible representative in the state. You can reach me everywhere, all social media, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and it's at TN Rep Parkinson. Or you can reach me via email. My legislative email is rep.antonio.parkinson@capitol, the CAPITOL.tn.gov. And I have a district office. Just pull up. We're at 3385 Austin Peak. We have a district office. Most of the time we have somebody's in there, and you can pull up a call or, stop by to have some coffee or a shot, and, we'll make things happen. So hit us up. We're accessible. I'm talking about a vaccine shot.
No, you're not. That's fine. I will take you up on that wholeheartedly.
Right.
Okay. Thank you all so much. We appreciate you. We honor you. I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Harris. Have a fantastic evening.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kat. You muted.
You have to unmute. Unmute.
We'll start again. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight for our Fireside Chat for District 6 and 7. I'm Michael Harris, Chairman of the Shelby County Democratic Party. And I want to make sure that we take a moment to recognize those who put in so much hard work to make tonight possible. First, let's pause and say thank you to Kat Allen, our moderator for the evening. She had an enormous task before her tonight, but she handled it wonderfully. We'd like to thank a young lady who's working behind the scenes. She's making everything come up on the screen and all of the transitions happen. Her name is Miss Tracy O'Connor. She is very active with the Shelby County Democratic Party, and tonight is no different. She's helping us to produce this live stream, and so thank you so much, Miss O'Connor. We also want to thank those who took the lead in helping to organize this event tonight, which would be Sarah Beth Larson, Frankie Dakin, and to all of those who worked as part of the DGC districts for District 6 and 7 who worked to make tonight possible. So thank you so much. And I also want to thank our elected officials. They brought the thunder tonight. They spoke candidly on the issues, and they spoke directly and sincerely, and we appreciate that. We thank you, Ms. Councilwoman Michael Easter Thomas. We thank you, County Commissioner Willie Brooks, and County Commissioner Tammy Sawyer, and State Representative Antonio Parkinson. We appreciate your hard work, and we understand the challenges and the enormous difficulties you face day in and day out on your jobs. And I want to just borrow a phrase in closing from Commissioner Sawyer. She said, "This is a power struggle. This is a fight. It's not going to be fair, but we have to take a stand. We have to fight to make good decisions for those who are in Shelby County. And then we need to fight to make sure that others aren't trying to usurp that authority or step in our territory and prevent us from doing what is best for Shelby County." We heard from our elected officials tonight, and I think we found some space where there's agreement and we can all unify on this. One, protect our aquifer. Let's fight for that and do as much as we can. We have to prioritize infrastructure and improvements and commit to making ongoing investments that will protect our aquifer going forward. Let's make sure that while we are handling vaccine distribution, that we do so equitably. Make sure we prioritize based on risk, but let's not forget those who are working to make our lives possible. I like the example that was used during the Fireside Chat about the Amazon worker who's delivering the goods that so many of us order, but may not have access to get the vaccine, or that person who might not be able to get off work, or who doesn't have transportation to get a vaccine. Let's make sure that we're doing it efficiently and with prioritization in mind, but also with fairness in mind. And then the last two things, let's make sure that we take a stand against awful legislation that is toxic and doesn't serve to do anything but strip us of our ability to make the best decisions for Shelby County. Let's take a stand against Brian Kelsey. And I am asking, we are calling all Democrats in any elected position, if it's in your wheelhouse, to take a stand against this type of legislation or this type of movement. We ask you to do that, and do that in the name of the Democratic Party. Do that in the name of making the best possible decision that you can for all of us who are your constituents and the voters who put you in office. And I'll end with this. Voters, Democrats, those who were once Republicans and are on the line, join the fold. We have your best interests at heart. And remember that we all can make a difference, and one vote can be the difference. Just one. So your vote matters, and we thank you for joining us tonight. On next week, our guest for our Fireside Chat will be County Commissioner Mikhail Lowry, County Commissioner Reginald Milton, and City Councilman for Super District 8-1, Mr. J.B. Smiley Jr. And so we'll be having a discussion with them. Our Fireside Chat next week is on Wednesday, not Thursday. So on Wednesday night, March 10th at 6:00 p.m., join us for our next Fireside Chat event. And until then, enjoy your week and be blessed.